The Millionaire's twins won't sit still with any nanny until a maid did the impossible. If you love stories like this, I invite you to subscribe to our channel and leave a comment about which city you're watching this video from. Let's continue the story now. What the hell do you think you're doing in my bed? Marcus Johnson's voice shattered the silence like a hammer against glass. He stood in the doorway to the master bedroom, his tall body rigid with anger. Disbelief etched in every hard line of his face. Rainwater dripped from his coat, but he didn't seem to notice, overcome with rage. All her attention was on the woman in her bed, Maya Williams. She shot up from the mattress, her heart racing and her eyes wide, not with guilt, but with shock. Her twins, Ethan and Eli, were curled up on either side of her, finally asleep, their faces soft and their breathing labored. The teddy bear in Ethan's arms rose and fell in rhythm with his chest. "I can explain," Maya said softly, trying not to wake the boys. Her hands rose slightly, calm, open. They were scared. Eli started crying. Ethan got a nosebleed. Marcus didn't let her finish. His palm came down quickly, a sharp crack echoing off the walls as it connected with her cheek. Maya staggered back, gasping, one hand flying to her face. She didn't scream, didn't speak. Her eyes locked with his, stunned more by the blow than by fury. "I don't care about your excuse," Marcus growled. "You're fired. Get out of my house now." She stood there for a moment, her hand pressed to her face, trying to control her breathing. Her voice, when it came, was low, almost a whisper. "They begged me not to leave them. I stayed because they were finally calm, finally safe. I told them to leave." Maya looked at the boys, still sleeping so soundly, so peacefully, as if the shadows that haunted them had finally lifted. She leaned down gently, kissing the top of Eli's head, then Ethan's. No words, no fuss. And then she stepped away from the bed, shoes in hand, and walked past Marcus without another word. He didn't stop her. He didn't apologize. Subscribe to the channel and let us know what you think in the comments so far. Let's get back to the story. Downstairs, Mrs. Keller turned as Maya descended the stairs. The red mark on her cheek said it all. The older woman's eyes widened in shock. Maya said nothing. Outside, the rain had eased to a drizzle. Maya stepped out into the gray afternoon, straightened her coat, and began walking toward the gate. Back upstairs, Marcus stood in the master bedroom, still breathing heavily. He glanced at the bed again, his jaw clenched, and then something occurred to him. The silence. He stepped closer. Ethan's forehead was smooth. No movement. No whispering, no cold sweat. Eli's thumb was in his mouth, but his other hand still rested relaxed on the blanket. They were asleep, not drugged, not exhausted from crying, just asleep. His throat tightened. 14 nannies, therapists, doctors, hours of screaming and anxiety attacks, and yet Maya, that soft-spoken stranger, managed what none of them could, hit her. She sat on the edge of the bed, her head in her hands. Shame seeped into his chest like ink in water. On the nightstand, a note lay folded once. He opened it. "If you can't stay for them, at least don't alienate those who will." It wasn't signed. He read it twice, then again. His reflection in the nearby mirror stared back at him. A man hardened by grief, drowning in control, suffocated by silence. At the end of the hall, Mrs. Keller watched. "Sir," she said softly. She didn't touch anything there, only bringing it in when the little one had a nosebleed. He didn't respond. She stayed because they asked her to. That's it. They didn't ask about me. They didn't ask about anyone else. Only her. Marcus looked up slowly, his eyes filled with something more than anger, something closer to regret. Outside, the gate creaked shut, and for the first time in months, The Johnson house was silent, not with sadness or anger, but with something else. Peace, the kind of peace Maya had left behind. The house was too quiet, not the comforting kind. Like the silence of falling snow or the gentle turning of pages in an old book. It was the kind of silence that felt wrong, empty and unfinished, like an unanswered question. Marcus Johnson sat alone in his office, his untouched glass of whiskey beside him. The note Maya had left on the table like a judgment. If you can't stay for them, at least don't push away those who will. He had already read it 7 times. Outside, twilight spread over the estate like a heavy quilt, and the wind blew gently against the windows. Inside, the twins still slept, oblivious to the storm they had just weathered, oblivious to the fact that the only person they had allowed into their fragile world was gone. Marcus leaned back in his leather chair and rubbed his temples. His hand stung slightly, the smack of his hand still etched into his skin. He hadn't planned it. It wasn't who he believed it to be, and yet it happened, a moment of misinterpreted rage. Born of pain and 1,000 silent failures, he had hit a woman, and not just any woman. He stood up abruptly and went upstairs. The hallway outside the boys' room smelled faintly of lavender and warm cotton. A small wooden stool stood against the wall. Maya's sketchbook was on top, carefully closed, as if she'd left it there on purpose. He picked it up. Inside were simple, rough, unpracticed drawings, but full of emotion. 2 boys holding hands under a tree. A tall house with many windows, a figure sitting between the boys, arms outstretched like wings, a brief caption below, "The one who stays." He exhaled slowly. In the children's room, Eli stirred. Marcus peeked inside. The boy rolled over but didn't wake up. No nightmares, no tears. He closed the door softly. Downstairs, Mrs. Keller was folding napkins when Marcus entered the kitchen. She looked up and froze. Something in his expression told her to drop the blanket. "She was gone," he said simply. "I know," she replied. "I made a mistake," he said almost to himself. Mrs. Keller raised her eyebrows, but her voice remained neutral. "Don't tell me." "She was in my bed." "She was in your room," Keller corrected, "because the boys didn't want to sleep anywhere else. You weren't here." "I was. I heard them crying, begging for her. She soothed them." He pressed his lips together. "I know what you thought," she said gently. But you weren't thinking." Silence fell between them. He glanced at the chair where Maya had sat during lunch the day before. It seemed like weeks ago. "I need to find her," he said. Mrs. Keller didn't argue. "Start with the return address on her letter, Georgia." He nodded, already heading down the hall. Across town, Maya sat alone on a bench in front of the train station, her cheeks still throbbing from the cold. She didn't cry, not when he yelled, not when he hit her. Not even when she walked through the front gates with nothing but her purse and the ache of unfinished work in her chest. But now, with her coat tightly wrapped around her and her fingers wrapped around a warm cup of vending machine coffee, the tears finally welled up. She quickly wiped them away, not out of embarrassment, but because crying in public was a habit she'd spent years unlearning. A woman nearby watched her for a moment, then wordlessly offered her a tissue. Maya smiled gratefully and looked up at the night sky. It was funny, in a cruel way. She'd survived worse things than a slap. She'd suffered abandonment by a foster family at 11, the loss of her own son to illness, and been told repeatedly that she was too soft to handle difficult cases. But that house, those boys, had touched something inside her she hadn't touched in years. What do you think of Maya? If you think she's truly special, like her to show your support. And don't forget to share where you're watching this video from. Maybe someone near you is watching too. The train stopped with a long sigh of brakes and metal. She stood up slowly, unsure if she was bored. Her ticket was in her coat pocket. Destination: Savannah. But her heart was still up there, in a white house in Greenwich, where two boys were finally learning to sleep. She sat down again. The next morning, Marcus was in his son's room with a tray of scrambled eggs, toast with strawberry jam, and a small bowl of chopped fruit. He'd never done this before. Not once since their mother died. Eli sat up groggily. "Where's Miss Maya?" Marcus hesitated. Ethan sat down too. Did she leave? Marcus nodded. She needed to leave. Why? Ellie's voice cracked. "She didn't do anything wrong," Ethan said, his eyes narrowing. "She helped us." "You saw. We were good." Marcus knelt beside the bed and placed the tray on the nightstand. "It wasn't your fault." "It was mine." Eli stared at him. "Did you yell at her?" Marcus wasn't lying. "Yes. Did you hit her?" Ethan's voice was low. Marcus's throat tightened. He nodded once. The two boys turned. He remained there, kneeling on the carpet, for a long time. "I'll fix it," he said finally. "I'll bring her back." They didn't answer, but they listened. Later that day, Maya boarded a local bus, not a train, and headed to the nearby shelter where she usually volunteered. She needed space. Perspective. A place to remember that the world was bigger than one house, even one that held her heart. That afternoon, she taught a writing class to a group of teenagers, many of them runaways. She told stories not about Marcus or his children, but about choosing to stay when others leave, about recognizing her worth even when others don't. When she left the shelter, there was a note stuck in the spokes of her bicycle. It wasn't from Marcus, but it said, "They asked for you." Both of them. Maya looked up at the sky, now speckled with orange, and this time she smiled. Marcus Johnson didn't knock. He entered the old community center just as the sun began to set behind the trees, casting long golden shadows across the gymnasium floor. The sound of his polished shoes on the linoleum was out of place there, like a cello in a punk rock band. But he didn't move. He scanned the room and spotted Maya in the back, crouched beside a whiteboard, erasing crooked letters from a lesson. Around her, teenagers gathered in a relaxed circle, laughing, joking, their notebooks scattered across the floor. Maya laughed with them, her voice lighter than he remembered, not without pain, but relieved for a moment. He didn't realize how much he'd been holding his breath until she looked up and saw him. The laughter died, not because someone told it to, but because something in Maya's posture shifted like a curtain being drawn mid-performance. She stood, and he walked toward her, empty-handed, no briefcase, no apology letter, just the weight of what he'd done. "I need to talk to you," he said. The girls eyed him warily, one of them stepping slightly in front of Maya. "It's okay," Maya said gently, and the girl relaxed. Marcus looked at the whiteboard. A single sentence was written at the top. "Your voice has value, even when it shakes." He turned to Maya. "May I?" She nodded, leading him outside to the bench near the bus stop, the same one she'd sat on the day before, coffee in hand and tears hiding in the corners of her eyes. "I was wrong," he said immediately. "I judged you, reacted without listening, and put my hands on you. This is something I will regret for the rest of my life." Maya said nothing. "I saw you in my space, in my bed," he continued. "And I let fear speak louder than the truth. That wasn't just unfair, it was cruel." "You didn't believe me," she said. Her voice wasn't angry, just tired. "Even after your children trusted me, I know," he said. She looked away. "You can't come back into my life because you finally realized I was telling the truth. I'm not here to clear my name," he said. "I'm here because they asked for you. Not a babysitter, you." Maya's eyes softened. "How are they?" "Quiet," he admitted. "Too quiet." She nodded slowly. "This is not peace. It's a wound that closes without healing. He looked down, his hands clasped between his knees. I want to fix this. You can't fix this, she said, but you can start by recognizing that what your children need isn't control, but connection. He's expired. Come back. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she asked, if I say yes, will I still be an employee? He hesitated. You will be the number. You will have any title you want. Counselor, mentor, partner. She arched an eyebrow. Partner. In their care, he clarified, though the word sounded stronger than he intended. Maya considered. Great, she said. But I have conditions, of course. First, no cameras in the children's rooms. He winked. There isn't one. There was, she said. Last month, a babysitter told me. He frowned. They're meant for security. They teach children that privacy isn't their responsibility. He nodded once. She continued. They ate dinner at the table. With you, no phones, no business. He hesitated, but nodded again. Third, she said, let's rewrite the house rules. Together. With them. He looked at her. There are 5, he said. There are people, she replied. He gave a small smile. Anything else? She took a deep breath. Yes. Next time you raise your hand to someone who doesn't deserve it, anyone, I'm out of here, and I won't be back. His expression tightened. Understood. She stood up. I'll see them tomorrow morning. He stood up too. Want a ride? She shook her head. I'll take the bus. I still have to finish here. He nodded. Maya, thank you. She paused. Don't thank me yet. We're starting over, Mr. Johnson, and this time, I'm not walking on eggshells. She turned and walked back into the building, the whiteboard waiting for her. Marcus stood on the sidewalk, watching her go. That night, he cleared the dining room table himself. He called his children downstairs. He sat between them with a bowl of spaghetti and awkwardly tried to tell them a bedtime story, getting the names wrong and using harsh voices. They laughed at him, not unkindly, but honestly. Subscribe now and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Let's continue. And upstairs, in their newly made beds, Ethan whispered to Eli, She'll be back. How do you know? Eli asked. Because she said goodbye, Ethan replied, pulling the blanket over his head. No one does that anymore. The morning Maya returned to the Johnson estate. The sky was a soft shade of peach and slate blue, birds fluttered in the treetops, and the manicured lawn glistened with dew. She stood before the iron gates a moment before they swung open, gripping the handles of her worn canvas bag like armor. Everything looked the same, yet nothing felt the same. The butler, Harold, greeted her with a dazed blink, then stepped away with a slight bow. Miss Williams, he said, with something approaching a bow. Welcome back. Thank you, Maya replied, passing through the polished marble lobby, the imposing chandelier, and the silence that had previously seemed suffocating. She heard footsteps upstairs, small, quick, and uncoordinated. Then, a scream. She arrived. Eli was the first to round the stairs. Arms open, grinning from ear to ear. Ethan followed behind, slower, but bright-eyed, clutching a sketchbook. Maya knelt just in time to scoop Eli up in her arms. Well, hello, she said, chuckling softly into his curls. We made a welcome sign, Ethan murmured, handing her the notebook. On the first page was a shaky drawing of her, the 2 boys, and a house with a big heart on top. The caption read, You stayed even when you left. Maya felt a lump in her throat. How beautiful, dear. Thank you. Footsteps approached behind them. Marcus stood at the base of the stairs, wearing a gray sweater and jeans, a far cry from his usual starched suits. He looked like someone trying, not pretending. Breakfast is ready, he said. Maya stood, smoothing her blouse. Good, because we have rules to rewrite. In the kitchen, the four gathered around the table. No phones, no staff, just a bowl of scrambled eggs, honey toast, and fresh orange juice. Then Maya began, grabbing a notebook. Let's talk about what it means to live here. Together, what's fair, what's safe, and what makes this house feel like home. Ethan raised his hand. Can we play music during bath time? Maya nodded. Fair enough, Eli added. And no broccoli, unless you're in disguise. Marcus coughed and laughed. Maybe I need clarification on that. Maya smiled. Let's keep a list, but it's not just about vegetables. It's about boundaries. She looked at Marcus. For all of us. He nodded, serious now. Understood. For the next hour, the boys scribbled rules with crayon, always hit, no yelling close to bedtime, hugs must be asked for, pancakes on Sundays, and a story each before lights out. Maya wrote hers. Listen first. Apologize when you're wrong. No cameras, no exceptions. Marcus added a neatly handwritten line. Make room for forgiveness, even when it's hard. When they finished, Maya stuck the paper to the fridge with 2 smiling sun magnets. There you go, she said. The new house rules. Later, while the boys played outside, Marcus found Maya in the library, sorting through children's books. They've changed since you left, he said. She looked up. Or maybe they've always been capable of this, and no one gave them the space. I've changed too, he said, more hesitantly. She didn't look away. I believe that. He came closer. What did you do? Stay. Leaving. Coming back. This is more than I deserved. Maya stood up and put the last book on the shelf. Maybe, but it was what they deserved. And I wasn't going to let your mistake be their lesson. He cringed a little, but nodded. I want to improve, so start by being present, really present. Not just when it's easy. He looked down, ashamed. Do you think they'll ever forgive me? Maya softened. They already have it. Children are better at it than adults, but it takes earning it. Every day. That night, Marcus put the boys to bed for the first time since their mother's death. He was barely reading a storybook. Maya stood near the door, listening to the boys laugh at his pronunciation mistakes, correcting him and asking for just one more page. After the lights went out, Marcus followed Maya into the hallway. I was thinking, he said, about what you said, about not being a team member, about being more, She crossed her arms politely. You're not going to offer me a promotion, are you? He gave a weak smile. I was going to give you a voice. She tilted her head. I want you to help me build something, not just for them, but for other children like them. Children who have lost something. Someone. Maya's eyes widened. You mean a base? He nodded. Something real. You guide. I finance. She stared at him for a long moment and then said, If we do this, it will be on our terms. No media circus. No performative charity. I agree. She held out her hand. Then we have a deal, Mr. Johnson. He shook her hand. You can call me Marcus. She smiled. Okay, Marcus. That night, as she walked to the guest room, her own space, no longer just a temporary bed, she stopped outside the boys' room. From inside, a whisper. She's back, Eli said. I told you so, Ethan replied. And Maya, leaning gently against the doorframe, whispered to herself, Yes, 3 weeks after Maya's return, the house no longer echoed with silence, but hummed with life. Breakfasts were noisier, bath times messier, and the boys, once withdrawn and fragile, began to bloom like wildflowers freed from winter. The refrigerator rulers were slightly worn around the edges from the eager fingers that pointed at them daily. And Marcus, the ever-stoic patriarch, found himself folding tiny socks and learning how to poorly braid his hair. But not everything changed at the same pace. Late on a Friday night, long after the boys had fallen asleep and the staff had gone to bed, Maya wandered the halls. She often did this when the weight of memories pressed too heavily on her. The silence helped her think, to breathe. But that night, something was wrong. The library door was ajar. Light filtered through the crack in a thin thread. She opened it carefully. Marcus was there, sitting at the table. Shoulders slumped forward, his cell phone in one hand and a half-empty glass of whiskey in the other. He didn't notice her at first. "Bad news?" she asked softly. He flinched a little, then looked up. "Maya, I'm sorry. I didn't hear. You're 3 inches from the bourbon. I figured something was wrong." He put down the glass and cleared his throat. Alone, reading an email. She waited. Finally, he turned the screen so she could see. The subject line read, "Custody hearing." Notice of motion. Maya blinked. "Custody hearing? For the boys?" He nodded, his jaw set. "Rebecca's parents, the Hollingsworths. They filed for temporary guardianship, claiming I'm unfit. On what grounds?" He scoffed. "Bitterness, neglect, emotional instability, domestic incident." Maya's face darkened. "They figured out what happened. About me." "Apparently," he murmured. "They've been watching, waiting, now that the boys are starting to open up. Now that we finally have some stability. They want to put an end to this." She sat across from him. "Have they ever gotten involved in the boys' lives?" "Since the funeral," he said, "they blamed me for Rebecca's depression. They said I buried her too quickly, that I kept the boys from grieving properly. Maybe they weren't entirely wrong." Maya was silent for a long moment. "Do you want me to testify? About the changes I saw? What I documented?" Marcus hesitated. "I don't know if this helps, or makes things worse. They'll argue that your presence proves I can't raise children alone. So maybe we won't face them alone," she said firmly. "Maybe we'll show them what family really looks like, what healing really requires." His eyes met hers. "Would you do that? Would you stand up in court? After everything?" "I would do it for them," Maya said. "Not for you, not for appearances, but for Ethan and Eli." He exhaled, the tension in his body dissipating a little. "Do you really believe I can win?" She stood, went to the window, and looked out into the darkness, where the boys' nightlights still glowed in the distance. "You won't win if you go in there like the man who slapped me. But you will win if you're like the man who apologized, who changed, who showed up." He nodded slowly. "Then I'll show up." The next morning, the house was buzzing with a quiet urgency. Maya spent time reviewing her journal entries, documenting the twins' routines, their emotional progress, and their interactions with their father. She gathered art projects, took photos of the rules from the refrigerator, and printed out a drawing Ethan had made of the 4 of them under a rainbow, holding hands. No one told him to. He just drew what felt real. Meanwhile, Marcus called his lawyer and scheduled an emergency meeting. For once, his instructions weren't about reputation management or asset protection, but rather about protecting 2 boys who had already lost too much. At lunch, Maya sat with the twins under the oak tree in the backyard, cutting grilled cheese into triangles and listening to them argue about which superhero would win in a race against the Flash or Sonic. "Do we have to go live with Grandma and Grandpa Hollingsworth?" Eli asked suddenly, his voice almost a whisper. Maya froze. Why do you ask that?" "I heard Dad on the phone," Ethan said. "They don't like him." Maya put down her plate. "Boys, no one's going to get you anywhere without a fight. And I'm not going anywhere either. But they're rich," Ethan said. "And they're, white?" Maya blinked in surprise. "What does that have to do with anything?" Ethan shrugged. "They said on the phone that Dad made bad choices. That your family, not of the family." Maya leaned closer, gently cupping Eli's chin. "Let me tell you something. Families aren't made of the same skin or surnames. They're built by those who stay, by those who fight for you when things get tough. And I'm here. That makes me part of the family." Eli hugged her, small and warm. "Then you better win," he murmured. Maya glanced at the house, where Marcus stood behind the window, watching them. If this story is captivating you, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what's next. Let's continue. He nodded slightly. They were ready to fight. That night, Maya sat at her desk in the guest room, typing her statement for the court. It wasn't grand or formal. It was honest. She described the boys' anxiety when she arrived, the screaming fits, the empty silences, the way they held her hand and then let go, afraid of hope, and how, in time, they began to laugh, sleep, and trust again. At the bottom of the page, she wrote, "Healing doesn't happen in straight lines. It's messy. But in that house, I saw 2 little boys begin to stitch themselves together, not for money, not for blood, but because someone chose to stay." She printed it out, put it in a folder, and left it on Marcus's desk. As she turned to leave, she glanced at the note he'd once kept, written by her, still glued to the edge of a picture frame. "If you can't stay for them, at least don't push away those who will." She smiled, because now, finally, no one was walking away, and everyone was staying. The courtroom smelled of polished marble and nervousness. Its grand columns loomed like silent judges, the morning sun streaming through the tall windows and gilded columns. Maya sat beside Marcus in the waiting room, both dressed in muted tones. He in a tailored gray suit, she in a soft navy dress with sleeves long enough to cover the faint, still healing scar on her wrist from a night the twins had nightmares. Marcus glanced at her sideways, nervous. Maya kept her gaze fixed straight ahead, only on what I can't control. Across the room stood the Hollingsworths, James and Eleanor, draped in opulent armor. Eleanor wore pearls, a crisp cream suit, and the kind of disapproving look that could curdle milk. James seemed less composed, his hand trembling against his cane. His eyes flicking to Marcus with barely concealed contempt. They didn't recognize Maya, not once. The door to courtroom 5 opened and a bailiff called them in. Maya stood, straightened her shoulders, and whispered to herself, "This is for Ethan and Eli." Inside, the courtroom was colder than the hallway. A judge sat behind a high bench, an older woman with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun and reading glasses hanging from a chain. Her nameplate read, "The Honorable Judith M." Templeton, Marcus's attorney, Mr. Fields, took first place, calm, experienced, with enough humanity in his tone to avoid sounding rehearsed. He spoke about the sudden loss of Rebecca Johnson, the family's struggle to rebuild after the tragedy, and Marcus's recent efforts to stabilize the home, highlighting the children's consistent therapy, their academic progress, and, most importantly, the presence of a certain Maya Williams. Then Eleanor took the witness stand. Her voice, though polite, trembled with indignation. "We only want the best for our grandchildren. What kind of example is a man who hires an unqualified stranger to raise his children? A man who, by his own admission, assaulted this woman in her own home." Maya didn't move, though her cheek burned at the memory. "And she's not even family," Eleanor added, her voice breaking. Judge Templeton raised an eyebrow. "Miss Williams isn't on trial, Mrs. Hollingsworth." "But her presence is the problem," Eleanor insisted. "Marcus can't care for the boys without outsourcing his emotional needs to someone else. Someone temporary, unrelated, poorly trained. She has no diploma or license." The judge turned to Maya. "Miss Williams, do you wish to respond?" Maya stood up and approached the bench. She carried no notes. She didn't need them. "I don't have a degree in child psychology," she said. But I've been through more pain than I'd wish on anyone, and I know what it's like when children stop believing they're safe." She paused, keeping her voice steady. When I arrived, Ethan and Eli weren't talking to anyone but each other. They weren't sleeping. They didn't trust him. Not their father, not the team, not even themselves. But little by little, they let me in. And not because I'm special, but because I stayed. Because I didn't run when things got tough. Because I looked them in the eye and said, "You matter." She met Eleanor's gaze. Then, James's. "You say I'm unqualified. But what qualifies someone to love children who aren't their own? To choose them every day without obligation? Because that's what I did. Not for a paycheck, not for praise, but because someone needed it." Judge Templeton sat back, her expression unreadable. "Thank you, Miss Williams." Maya returned to her seat. Marcus reached under the table and gently squeezed her hand. Later, Judge Templeton addressed the court. This court does not take custody challenges lightly, especially when brought by distant relatives against a surviving parent. After reviewing the evidence and testimony, it's clear that while Mr. Contrance Johnson made mistakes, he also took significant and consistent steps to heal his family. The boys are thriving under his care, thanks in large part to Miss Williams' support. She looked out for the Hollingsworths. "This court finds no basis to remove Mr. Johnson's custody," Anit requested. Eleanor let out a sharp gasp, followed by a rustling sound as she stood to protest. But James placed his hand on her wrist. "Never mind," he whispered. Maya stood still, her heart pounded, but her face remained serene. Outside, in the crisp autumn air, Marcus turned to her. "You saved them." Once again, she shook her head. "A number you did. You stood up. You stayed in the room." The boys waited at home, unaware of the verdict, curled up on the couch with Harold reading a comic book aloud to them in his deep baritone. When Marcus and Maya walked in, Eli was the first to spot them. "Did we win?" he asked. Maya knelt. We knelt. Ethan wrapped his arms around her waist. "Does this mean you're not leaving?" Maya kissed the top of his head. "I'm right where I belong." "Yeah." That night, as they put the boys to bed, Marcus stood in the doorway, watching Maya hum them to sleep. When she came into the hallway, he said softly, "I've never been good at saying thank you." "Then don't do it," she replied. "Keep showing up." He nodded, eyes softer than she'd ever seen them before. "Tomorrow," he said, "we'll start building this foundation. I already have architects scheduled." She smiled. "And the name?" He paused. "Johnson Williams Healing Center." "Yeah," Maya blinked, taken aback. "It's a lot." "It's true," he said. "You built it with us." She looked at the room where the boys now slept without fear. Maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning. The first board meeting of the Johnson Williams Healing Center wasn't held in a glass-walled skyscraper or a formal ballroom, but on the sun-drenched veranda of the Johnson estate. The furniture didn't match. The coffee was a little burnt. And one of the twins had left a crayon drawing taped to the window. A crooked tree with words written by a child above it. Home. Maya sat at the head of the table, her fingers clasped around a ceramic mug, her expression firm but alert. Marcus stood to her left, wearing jeans and a dress shirt, the sleeves rolled up. He made no attempt to dominate the room. He simply listened, taking notes on a leather pad, tapping his pencil occasionally, thoughtful. Across from them sat three potential partners: Dr. Angela Monroe, a retired child therapist, Joseph Kim, outreach coordinator for a local foster care program, and Lionel Pierce, a tech investor and one of Marcus's oldest, if not most skeptical, friends. "So, let me get this straight," Lionel said, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. "You want to build a space for children who have experienced trauma, but it's not a clinic, a shelter, a school. And it's not focused on adoption." Maya nodded. "Right. It's a third place, a sanctuary, a bridge between where they are and where they want to be." Angela leaned forward, intrigued. Who makes up the team? People like me, Maya said. Not just certified experts, survivors, mentors, adults who have been through the fire and can teach others how to get through it. Joseph scribbled something in his notebook. And how do you plan to handle funding, oversight, and accountability? Marcus gently interrupted. We'll handle the logistics. Maya will lead the heart. Lionel blinked, and the name remains. Maya smiled. Yes, it does. At the end of the hour, Angela agreed to join us as a clinical consultant. Joseph offered his connections with local agencies. And Lionel, after a long sigh and a murmur of, "This is brilliant or doomed," agreed to fund the first 6 months of programming. When the others left, Maya stayed behind to clean up the mess. Marcus stood in the doorway, watching her. "You handled this like a seasoned executive," he said. "I taught elementary school for 3 years," she replied, smiling. "Meeting rooms don't scare me." He walked into the room. "You were amazing." She didn't answer right away. She was staring at the drawing in the window. "You know," she said softly, "when I was a kid, I moved 12 times, 12 different houses. I never felt like any of them were mine." Marcus followed her gaze. "That's why this matters so much." She nodded. "Children need roots and wings." Later that day, the twins helped Maya unpack boxes of art supplies for the center's temporary installation in the East Wing. Ethan carefully stacked the paint pots, while Eli sorted the brushes by size. "Can we come here too?" Eli asked. "This is your home," Maya said. "Then yes, you can help improve the situation for others." Ethan looked up. "Can we teach them the rules?" Maya knelt beside him. "I think that's a great idea." They spent the afternoon creating a new version of the house rules this time, illustrated in color, with Ethan drawing smiling children and Eli adding stick figure families. Meanwhile, in the main house, Marcus made a difficult phone call. He had spoken to his lawyer that morning. There was no legal requirement to include Maya in any parenting decisions. She had no official custody, no documentation. But as he looked out the window and saw her kneeling beside her children, he realized something deeper than legality. She was already family. He picked up the phone. "Judge Templeton, please tell her this is Marcus Johnson." 2 weeks later, Maya received a large envelope in the mail. It contained a handwritten note from Marcus. Nothing temporary anymore. No more blurred lines. "You deserve the title you've already earned." Inside was a formal appointment document, naming her co-director of the foundation and legal guardian in his absence. Attached was a notarized petition from Marcus requesting joint custody of the twins, with Maya as co-signer. Maya read the petition 3 times before her hands began to shake. She hadn't asked for this, hadn't even imagined it. But somehow it was exactly what she'd always wanted, without knowing it. That night, she sat with Marcus on the back porch, the boys asleep upstairs, the fire crackling softly in the outdoor fireplace. "You didn't have to do that," she said softly. "I know," he replied, "but I needed to." She turned to him. "Why now?" "Because they deserve permanence," he said, "and so do you." She blinked back sudden tears. "I'm not perfect, me neither," he said. "But they don't need perfection. They need a gift, and you never left." She reached out to him. He didn't move this time. He held her. Above, a gentle wind stirred the trees. And for the first time in a long time, Maya Williams felt something deep and sacred settle inside her, something she once thought she would never feel again. Home. Maya didn't expect to see her mother again. She certainly didn't expect her to show up at the Johnson estate gate on a Monday afternoon, wearing a worn denim jacket and eyes that still held so many unsaid things. Marcus was the one who answered the intercom. "There's a woman here. She says she's your mother." Lorraine Williams. Maya froze. She was in the middle of organizing educational materials for the center's upcoming open-door posters, name tags, and laminated behavior charts, and suddenly her hands felt too heavy to move. "Is she here?" Maya asked, her voice barely audible. Marcus nodded slowly. "I can send her away." Maya stared at the stack of flashcards in her hands. Trust, forgive, safe, words she'd been teaching the twins for weeks. "No," she said. "Let her in." Lorraine stood in the doorway like someone waiting to be judged. Her hands twisted the strap of her bag, and her gaze darted around the hall, as if unsure what kind of daughter would build a life like that. Maya looked at her with a mixture of caution and firmness. "Hey, Mom, I wasn't sure if you'd remember me," Lorraine said, her voice hoarse from the cigarette and the weather. Maya crossed her arms. "It's something you never forget." They sat on the porch. Maya on one end of the couch, Lorraine on the other, a chasm of years and pain between them. "I heard your name," Lorraine began. "A woman at church said you were on the news, something about a center. Your face was in the paper." Maya didn't answer. "I was proud," Lorraine added softly. "But I knew you wouldn't want to hear it." Maya tilted her head. "Why now? Why after all these years?" Lorraine's eyes watered, and for a moment, Maya saw a crack in the mask. "Because I'm sick, and because I was wrong." This caught Maya off guard. "I didn't know how to be a mother," Lorraine whispered. "I was drowning in my own pain." Her father, well, he broke more than just furniture. And when he left, I didn't know how to hold anything back, not even you. Maya swallowed. "I waited. For years. For you to come find me. I know." Lorraine wiped her face. "I failed you." Silence fell between them. Then Maya asked, "Do you want to meet the boys?" Lorraine looked up sharply. "Do you have any kids?" Maya replied. "But they're mine in every way that matters." Lorraine hesitated. Would they like it? Would they like me? Maya looked out the window, where Ethan and Eli were chasing each other with paper airplanes, their laughter echoing like music. "They don't know you," she said, "but I'll tell them the truth, that you're trying." Later that night, Maya sat on the edge of the boys' bed as they bombarded her with questions. "She's your mother," Ethan asked in disbelief. "Why haven't we met her before?" Eli interrupted. "Because sometimes adults make mistakes," Maya said gently. "Big mistakes. Mistakes that take a long time to fix." "Is she staying here?" Ethan asked, clutching his stuffed tiger. "Not now," Maya replied. "But she wants to get to know you, little by little. If you don't mind." Eli looked thoughtful. "Only if she plays Uno with us." Maya laughed. "I'll let her know." Downstairs, Marcus was waiting in the kitchen. "How was it?" "They're curious," Maya said, more open than I expected. He poured her a cup of tea. "Are you okay?" Maya took the cup and held it close. "I'm not sure, but I think so. I want to try, to give it closure, maybe even to heal." Marcus nodded. "You're braver than most." She looked at him. "You make everything easier. Over the next few days." Lorraine visited the property in short, measured intervals. She sat with the twins under the large oak tree as they explained the house rules and showed her the mood board Maya had created. At first, she seemed stiff, unsure, but slowly she began to soften. She brought up stories from Maya's childhood, the good ones, the ones Maya had almost forgotten. She brought cookies that were too crumbly but tasted like Sunday mornings. And she brought faded, worn photos, but full of moments Maya had lost or buried. One evening, Maya sat with Lorraine in the library, flipping through one of the old albums. "You used to hum that same lullaby you sing to the boys," Lorraine said. "You were 3 years old. You couldn't sleep without it." Maya blinked, startled by the memory. "I thought I invented that melody. You didn't. You remembered it, even when you forgot about me." Silence fell. Then Lorraine reached into her bag and pulled out a small box. Inside was a faded, simple bracelet with a bird-shaped pendant. "I bought this the day you were born," she said, "but I never gave it to you." Maya held it gently, her fingers brushing the pendant. "Why a bird? Because I knew you'd fly someday. I just didn't know how far." Maya didn't cry, not then. But later, in the silence of her room, with the bracelet on her wrist and the moonlight casting soft shadows on the floor, she let the tears flow. Because healing wasn't a destination. It was 1,000 small decisions to open the door again, to try, forgive, not just others, but yourself. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. Autumn arrived in subtle whispers, the golden light lingering longer in the mornings, the chill kissing the skin just before sunset. At the Johnson Williams Center, preparations for the first Healing Weekend retreat were in full swing. Maya stood before the whiteboard in the newly renovated community room, mapping out the weekend's schedule with colored markers, while the boys folded blankets nearby. Marcus walked by with a clipboard and a smile. "You know none of these kids follow a color-coded schedule, right?" Maya gave him a playful look. "They don't know it's a color-coded schedule. But I will. It keeps me sane." He laughed, and for a moment, everything felt light, easy. But Maya had learned that healing brought friction. Growth scraped away the walls of old wounds, and this friction was coming fast. It started with a phone call from Joseph Kim, their contact at the local adoption agency. "Maya, we have a problem," he said. "What kind of complication?" "There's a girl, 16 years old. Her name is Brielle. She's been placed in 5 homes in the past year. All of them ended badly. She's smart, frighteningly smart, but reserved. She's refusing therapy. She doesn't want to go to group sessions, and now she refuses to stay in the system altogether." Maya listened silently. Joseph continued. "Her social worker thinks your center might be her last chance before ending up in juvenile detention. But she's unstable. I'm not going to lie to you. This is not a happy story." Maya took a deep breath. "Bring her inside." Brielle arrived with a single backpack, combat boots, and a wall of silence. Her hair was dyed a defiant shade of cobalt blue, and her arms were crossed over her chest like a shield. She didn't say anything during the orientation, didn't look anyone in the eye, and made it very clear verbally that she didn't need saving from anyone. Eli, who was watching cautiously from the doorway, whispered to Ethan, "She looks like she could defeat Spider-Man." Maya took a different approach. That night, while the other teens played board games and shared school stories, Maya found Brielle in the corner of the art room, scribbling furiously in a notebook. "Mind if I sit?" Brielle shrugged without looking up. "Free country." Maya sat silently. "What are you drawing?" "People." Maya tilted her head. "Someone I knew. No one you understood." There was no bitterness in her tone, only distance. Maya nodded. "Fair enough." They were silent for several minutes. Maya didn't insist. Instead, she pulled a notebook from her bag and began sketching beside her. Her lines weren't very precise, her shading clumsy. But the act of drawing, the act of sitting with Brielle as an equal, spoke louder than any therapy session. Finally, Brielle asked, "Why are you doing this? This, or this center? All of it?" Maya paused. "Subscribe and leave your opinion below. It might appear in the next video. Now, back to the story, because I was the kid no one knew what to do with. And someone chose to see me anyway." Brielle looked at her for the first time. Just a glimpse, but enough. "You have a chance," Brielle said softly. "I know." Over the next few days, Brielle didn't transform into a model resident, but she stopped cursing during meals. She joined a group hike, albeit at the back, and on the 3rd night, she accidentally laughed during a card game with Ethan and Marcus. Maya noticed everything, but Marcus noticed something else, too. "See how she watches you," he said one night as they folded sheets in the storage room. "She's suspicious, Maya replied. She's attached, Marcus said. Yes, and that's dangerous. Maya put the towel in her hands. Do you think I'm making the same mistake I made with the twins? I think you need to protect your own heart, he said softly. She nodded. That's not what this job is about. I know, Marcus said. But if you give too much of yourself, she'll leave. She's not leaving. He looked at her. They always go away, Maya. You said that once, remember? She stared at him, the words weighing more heavily than she expected. So maybe this time we won't leave her. The retreat continued. Teens painted murals, cooked group dinners, and shared their stories in fragments. Maya gave them space, never forcing, always inviting. On their last night, the group gathered beneath the lights of lanterns scattered throughout the garden. Brielle stood in the shadows at first, arms crossed and head bowed. But when Maya spoke, telling her own story of sleeping over at strangers' houses, of being told she was too much or too angry to be loved, Brielle leaned in closer. You talk too much, she murmured softly. Maya smiled. That's what they told me, Brielle said softly. I used to draw birds, before. When things got better, Maya turned to her. You still can. That night, after lights out, Brielle knocked on Maya's door. I don't want to go back, she said, her voice breaking, to the orphanage or anywhere else, to this place. It doesn't feel fake. Maya stepped forward and placed her hand on his shoulder. So stay. We'll find a way to make this place a home. Brielle nodded, wiping her eyes with the sleeve of her sweatshirt. As she turned to leave, Maya whispered, You're not amazing. You're perfect. And we see you. That was all Brielle needed. Sometimes healing didn't come in thunderclaps or epiphanies. Sometimes it came in quiet promises whispered behind open doors. It started with a headline, just a blip in the corner of a local online newspaper, but enough to send shivers down Maya's spine. Local millionaires, shelter program under scrutiny. Allegations of inadequate staffing, gaps in oversight. The article was short on details, but rich in implications. Anonymous sources, concerns raised. Children at risk. The text portrayed the Johnson-Williams Center as a well-intentioned but poorly managed operation, suggesting that Maya was unlicensed and unqualified, and insinuating that Marcus used his wealth to circumvent regulations. Marcus was furious. Maya remained silent. She read the article over and over, her fingers gripping the tablet so tightly the screen darkened from the pressure. This is defamation, Marcus growled. Someone is trying to sink us. Ugh. Someone who knows we're making progress, Maya said softly. The next day, Joseph called. Maya, I'm getting calls from the agency. They're asking if you're working with certified trauma counselors, if your background checks are up to date. This isn't just gossip. It's turning into a formal investigation. Maya closed her eyes. How bad? It's bad enough that they're talking about removing the children from the center, even Brielle. That was stronger than she expected. No, she said firmly. They can't take her. She's just starting to trust. Joseph sighed. You have to fight this, Maya, but calmly. Don't make the situation worse by making it public. Just strengthen your defenses. Quick. She hung up and went straight to Marcus. They're coming for us, she said. And if we don't step up, they'll take the kids, the financing, everything. Marcus leaned forward. We'll hire outside consultants, auditors. I'll have Monroe review all the policies, but... Maya, this is a scam. It's personal. Someone who knows us, Maya said. Knows the structure, the timeline. Marcus gritted his teeth. Do you think it's the Hollingsworths? No, Maya said. They wouldn't play silently like this. It feels closer. Later that night, as the rain beat against the windows, Maya sat in the center's office, sifting through personnel files, trying to find a weak link. A mistake. Something they didn't notice. Then she noticed Brielle's intake form. One signature was slightly different from that of the listed caseworker, which wasn't the one Joseph had assigned. The paper had been scanned on an old printer from an agency they hadn't worked with in over a year. Maya's heart sank. Someone had falsified the paperwork. She called Joseph immediately. This may sound crazy, but I think someone tampered with Brielle's file. Joseph opened his records. Wait, that's not our file. Where did this come from? I don't know, Maya said. Her voice tense. But someone planted it. Joseph was silent for a moment. So you need to get ahead of this. Now. The next morning, Maya called an emergency council meeting. Angela, Lionel, Joseph, and Marcus sat at the long table, tension thick in the air. She placed the forged document on the table. This is the weapon they're using against us, she said, and we need to disarm him. Angela frowned. This is serious. If an audit reveals a fabricated placement, they'll dismiss us for negligence even if we didn't know about it. Joseph sat back, frustrated. Someone let that slip. They're targeting Brielle because she's the easiest to discredit. If they can claim we failed her, they can destroy the entire center. Marcus stood up. So we don't give them a chance. We go to the press first. We tell the story ourselves. Lionel raised an eyebrow. You want to publicize a forgery? That's risky. Maya shook her head. Not just the fake. The truth. We tell them who Brielle is, why she came here, what she became. Angela looked at her. You'd put her in the center of a media storm. I'll ask her first, Maya said. She chooses. That night, Maya found Brielle in the art room, painting a huge canvas of a bird freeing itself from tangled ropes. Can I talk to you? Maya asked. Brielle continued painting. They're trying to send me back, aren't they? Yes. Brielle didn't stop. Will you let me? Maya stepped closer. Not without a fight. But we need your help. She explained the situation carefully. Honestly, I won't put you in the spotlight unless you say yes. She finished. Brielle put down her brush. You told me once I wasn't much. That I was perfect. Maya nodded. Then let's show them who I am, Brielle said. Let them see me. The next day, Maya stood before a group of reporters. Marcus stood beside her, Joseph and Angela in the back, and Brielle Brave, center. In front of the microphones. My name is Brielle Harris. I'm 16 years old. I've lived in 10 foster homes in 4 years. I've been called irreparable, unstable, and dangerous, but here, someone saw me. Someone stayed, and I began to believe that I could be important again. Her voice didn't waver. I'm not a case. I'm not a mistake. I'm a girl who paints birds because I forgot how to fly, and now I'm learning again. Maya stood up proudly. Cameras flashed. Questions arose. But the tide had turned. The truth, once buried, had a way of emerging, and this time it came with wings. The consequences weren't as explosive as Maya feared, but they were relentless. For 3 days straight, the media camped outside the estate gates. Some reporters shouted questions, others simply stood there, cameras trained, hoping to capture a picture of the girl who had revealed the story no one wanted to tell. Brielle was unfazed. In fact, she grew stronger. The center featured her artwork as part of its declaration, a gallery of resilience. Her bird painting was shared on social media, a symbol of second chances. His voice at the press conference echoed far beyond the local community, reaching statewide organizations. Emails poured in from survivors, supporters, skeptics, and believers. But not everyone was kind. An anonymous blogger published Brielle's juvenile record. Another called Maya a well-intentioned fraud. A national columnist wrote, "Charity is no substitute for training." Questioning Marcus's decision to entrust the children's future to unstructured empathy, Maya absorbed it all in silence. Until one morning, a handwritten letter arrived. No return address. There was a single line. "You saved my daughter when I couldn't. Thank you." There was no signature, but it was enough. At breakfast, the boys laughed over their cereal, arguing about whether orange juice went well with pancakes. Maya poured the coffee, smiled, and thought, "It's worth it, even the fireplace." Across the table, Marcus folded the newspaper and looked into her eyes. "You're holding on." "I need to," she said. "Not just for them," he added. "For you." She hesitated, then nodded. "For me, too." That day, they had a staff meeting. Every counselor, mentor, volunteer. Maya stood at the front of the room, carrying the weight of the last few weeks on her chest. "I won't pretend this hasn't shaken us," she said, "but I won't apologize for our mission. We didn't build this center to look pretty. We built it because children fall through the cracks, and we decided to stand in those cracks and hold them." The room fell silent. Then Angela stood up. "We are with you, one by one." The team nodded. Some murmured, "Always, yes, we did." That night, Maya walked alone through the halls of the center. The walls were covered with drawings, quotes from the children, some photos of family dinners. She stopped in front of one of them. Ethan and Eli, hugs around Brielle, the three of them laughing, home. Captured in a frame. In the East Wing, she found Brielle working late on a new mural, a city skyline with windows glowing gold. "You're still here," Maya said gently. Brielle shrugged, wiping her hands on a cloth. "I can't sleep." "Are you okay?" Brielle paused. "Yeah, I'm just thinking about what happens next. People think that because I've been on camera, I'm okay now. But I still get angry for no reason. I still don't trust people so easily. I still—" She stopped talking. Maya sat down beside her. "You don't have to break up to be free." They were silent. The only sound was the faint hum of distant crickets. Then Brielle said, "Do you think I could do it?" "I don't know. Speak at schools. Speak to other kids like me." Maya smiled. "You just did it, and yes, you're more than capable." Brielle smiled, a glimmer of pride behind her guarded expression. "So I do. I want to be the person I needed back then." The next morning, I received a call from a representative of the State Child Welfare Committee. "We're reviewing the Johnson-Williams model," the voice said. "It's unconventional, but it's working. We'd like to meet. Maybe replicate this somewhere else." Maya stood still. "Are you saying you want to expand?" "We are," the voice replied. "We want to learn." After hanging up, she stared out the window for a long moment, her thoughts swirling. This was bigger than her now. Later that week, Maya, Marcus, and Brielle sat with the boys under the oak tree. The air smelled of cinnamon and dried leaves. Ethan read aloud from a children's book, pausing every few sentences for Eli to come up with alternate endings. Brielle listened with a small smile. "I want to write a book someday," Eli said suddenly. "About kids fighting bad guys." Maya messed up his hair. "Start with the truth. That's always the best story." Marcus leaned against the trunk, his hand lightly brushing Maya's. She didn't move. The sun was setting, casting golden lines through the branches. They were all different. Broken, reassembled, stitched together by shared pain and rebuilt hope. But they were whole, not because they erased the cracks, but because they filled them with gold. Kintsugi. Maya had read about it once. The Japanese art of repairing broken pottery with gold lacquer, celebrating history, not hiding it. That's what they were doing. And maybe, just maybe, that's what healing meant. A choice. Every day. To stay. Maya didn't recognize the man at first. He was tall, thin, wearing a cheap beige blazer, and stood in the community center's reception area as if unsure whether he belonged there or wanted to leave. His face was partially obscured by a baseball cap. but something about his nervous yet familiar posture stirred something buried deep within her chest. It was Angela who waved to Maya. He said, "He's here to talk to you." He didn't say his name. Maya approached cautiously. "Can I help you?" The man looked up. And so, 20 years passed. "Maya," he said, his voice hoarse and uncertain. "It's me, your father." Time stood still. She heard first a rush of blood in her ears, a buzzing of disbelief, and then in her chest, a cold silence. "You can't say my name," she said softly. "I know." "I know," he replied quickly, taking off his cap. His hair was gray now, his eyes bloodshot. "I shouldn't be here. I saw the press conference. I saw you, and Maya, I had to come." She froze. People moved behind her. Children laughed in the playroom. A counselor instructed her on a confidence-building activity. The world kept spinning, but inside her, something broke. Marcus arrived at that moment, sensing something was wrong. His gaze shifted from one to the other. "Is this man bothering you?" he asked. Maya didn't take her eyes off her father. Yes, I don't know." "I'll give you space," Marcus said quietly. But he didn't go very far. "I'm not here to spoil anything," her father said. "I don't want money. I don't want anything. I just wanted to see if you were okay." Maya let out a slow, heavy, steady sigh. "You left. When I was 10, when Mom had a breakdown, when everything fell apart." "I was sick, Maya," he whispered. "Addicted. Lost. I didn't know how to stay." "That's no excuse," she said. "It's a fact. But it doesn't erase what happened. Or what didn't happen." He nodded, shame settling on his shoulders. "I missed your life." You lost," she corrected. They were silent. Then he took something out of his coat pocket, a photo, curved at the corners, faded by time. A girl in overalls with braids and scraped knees, holding a sketchbook and squinting at the sun. "You left this on the porch the day I left," he said. "I kept it. It was the only piece I had." Maya felt a lump in her throat. That photo was from a summer day she barely remembered, taken by a neighbor. She'd forgotten he existed. But seeing him now was like being punched in the memory. "I'm trying to get clean," he said. "I've been sober for 2 years. I work at an auto repair shop outside Baton Rouge. I see a therapist. I go to meetings." Maya crossed her arms. "And what? You want forgiveness?" He looked at her, his eyes glazed. "Number I want. Grace." The word sounded different. Grace wasn't a transaction. It wasn't something earned or negotiated. It was a gift, freely offered, or not at all. "I can't guarantee that," she said. He nodded. "I understand, but I can promise I won't hate you anymore," she added. "That's something." A tear slowly ran down her cheek. "That's all." Maya didn't tell the boys that night. She didn't tell Brielle, Marcus, or even Lorraine. She needed time to file it away. Like a fragile document you're not ready to read but can't throw away. Instead, she made dinner. She helped Eli with his math homework. She read 2 chapters of their favorite mystery novel to Ethan. Then, when the house was quiet, she sat in the sunroom with Marcus. "He's here," she said. Marcus looked up. "Your father?" She nodded. It was like talking to a ghost I'd been angry with for so long I'd forgotten I was still haunted. "Oh, do you want him in your life?" "I don't know," she said honestly. "But I just wanted him to see me, that's all." Marcus reached out and took her hand. "You're seen," he said simply. She leaned her head against his shoulder, and for the first time that day, the tremor in her heart began to calm. 2 days later, Brielle came rushing into the office holding a pamphlet. Lo and behold, she was beaming. "My first speaking engagement, a panel of young people in Atlanta. They want me to speak about confidence and art." Maya smiled. "How amazing. When is it?" "Next month." But I'll need a chaperone. Maya raised an eyebrow. Are you asking me? Brielle gave a wry smile. I trust you not to let me eat 3 gas station burritos in a row. Flawed logic, Maya said. But flattering. Then Brielle got serious. I'm nervous. That's good, Maya said. It means you care. Brielle looked at her with that cautious hope Maya knew so well. Thank you for seeing me, even when I couldn't see myself. Maya touched her shoulder. That's what light does. It finds the cracks and comes in anyway. And in that moment, Maya understood something new. Healing didn't always mean forgetting. It meant integrating fragility into something fuller, stronger, more real. It meant letting go of what you couldn't change and holding on tightly to what you could. It meant becoming the kind of person who could forgive, not to excuse the past, but to free the future. And it meant, finally, standing up for herself. Maya Williams, mother, mentor, healer, and no longer haunted. 6 months had passed since the hazy moment of the hearing. The estate's gardens were laden with late spring flowers, and the center was bustling with its new schedule of programs. He wasn't perfect, but he was thriving. Mia, the center's youngest counselor, had started weekly sessions with Brielle. Ethan had moved up a grade and was doing great spelling. Eli decided he would create his own superhero team, complete with capes. And Maya, well, Maya watched them grow like a gardener who learned to put down roots in hope. That morning dawned bright and clear. Marcus had invited the board and staff to a small celebration under the oak tree. A banner made by the twins read, 1 year of staying. Maya arrived early to fluff blankets and make glasses of lemonade. She hesitated near the banner, remembering the first shaky version. Now it felt familiar, like a moment of belonging. All the guests gathered. Angela, Joseph, Lionel, Lorraine, and local agency staff occupied chairs scattered across the lawn. Children sat in a circle, twirling paper lanterns. Marcus began. When we named this center, we united 2 impossible odds, wealth and empathy. But the true miracle isn't the programs or the funding. It's the perseverance. It's the choice someone makes every day when no one is looking. Lorraine stood up then, unexpectedly. But surely, my daughter taught me more than I ever gave her the chance to learn. It's an honor to be here, not as a spectator, but as someone who is still growing. Subscribe to the channel and comment on what caught your attention. Now, let's move on. Ethan and Eli marched ahead, each holding a gold-painted stone. They placed it at Maya's feet. Ethan said loudly, "And this stone is gold because it's brave," Eli added quietly. "This one's gold because it stays." Maya swallowed hard, tears welling in her throat. Marcus stood beside her, holding hands as the twins handed out their gifts. Joseph cleared his throat and said, "We reviewed our 6-month results. Schools report increased attendance, fewer behavioral referrals, and, most importantly, children regaining confidence." Angela introduced herself. "We're expanding. 2 more sites." With Maya at the helm. Lionel raised his glass. A toast to the woman who didn't ask to be part of a family. She built one anyway. Maya blinked and grabbed Marcus's hand. He squeezed hers in return. As the crowd began to mingle, Brielle approached Maya with her sketchbook in hand. Inside was a new drawing. 4 golden trees, each different from the other, each leaning toward the center as if together supporting something larger. Below, in her handwriting, was what the growth looked like. Maya kissed her cheek and whispered, "Yes, darling, exactly." The late afternoon sun cast long shadows as the crowd dispersed. The twins ran off to play tag. Lorraine stood beside Maya under the oak tree. "I'm proud," Lorraine said softly, looking up at the stone towers the twins had built. Maya nodded. "Proud is different from forgiven, but you're here." Lorraine reached out to her. "And I want to keep showing up, Maya Latat." She leaned over and rested her head on Lorraine's shoulder. Marcus found them and put his arm around both women. "Let's plant something together. A new flower bed, maybe roses." Maya's lips curled. "Only if we promise to take care of him every week." He laughed. "Deal." That night, Europa Marcus Butler brought refills of lemonade for everyone. The children's laughter echoed across the lawn. The faint scent of jasmine settled in as dusk crept over the property. Later, when the headlights faded from the driveway and downtown grew quiet again, Marcus found Maya on the porch, drafting new rules, which Ethan now labeled community rules. Trust, kindness, bravery, presence. He closed the door. "I wanted to ask, will you marry me?" She looked up, stunned, not by what it was, but because he'd said it now, softly. In a way, it wasn't a proposal. It was a promise. She didn't respond at first. She closed her sketchbook and clutched it to her chest. Then she said, "Yes, but only if you know." "I'm not perfect." He brushed the hair from her face. "I don't either, but we're better off growing together." And outside, the wind rustled in the oak tree, as if congratulating them with an ancient approval, because the cure had become their inheritance, a family built not by blood, but by 1,000 daily actions wrapped in gold. And in that moment, Maya Williams felt grounded and soaring, all at the same time. Spring had already arrived in full force when the Johnson Williams Center opened its second location in Bridgeport. The ribbon-cutting ceremony was quiet and purposeful. Children from the Greenwich Center stood beside Maya and Marcus, holding signs reading, "Hope grows here, second chances exist too." Neighbors lined the sidewalk, cameras flashed softly, and bees buzzed among newly planted daisies in recycled cans. Maya stood before the small crowd, sunlight glinting off the golden strands of her hair. She could feel centuries of expectation, the expectation that she would fail, the expectation that her past could define her future. But there she was, surrounded by people who had witnessed her struggle for belonging and overcome it. Marcus stood beside her, his arm around her waist. He nodded as she began, "We launched this center because we believe in the power of permanence. But today, we are here to say that healing also deserves wings, not just permanence, but possibility." The children outside applauded and waved. Press crews filmed from the street, but Marcus kept his eyes fixed on the families waiting behind them, people who showed up because they wanted to see something real. Later, after greeting officials and answering questions from the curious press, Maya walked behind the building, where volunteers were hanging new banners and setting up craft stations. Lorraine approached with a tray of lemon squares and mineral water. She handed one to Maya and smiled without interfering. "They're good," Maya said with her mouth full. Lorraine chuckled softly. "Wholesome, like this place?" Maya paused and asked, "Would you like to stroll through the gardens?" They walked down a path lined with budding roses and small saplings. Lorraine stopped before a sapling planted in Ethan and Eli's honor. Its leaves swayed in a breeze that smelled of pollen and possibility. "I planted this," Maya said, "so someone who feels alone will know they can put down roots even in hard soil." Lorraine placed her hand on the small twig. "You have deep roots." That afternoon, in the community room, the team gathered for their first training session in the new location. Angela stood at the front, welcoming them warmly. Brielle sat nearby, sketching out program plans, while Joseph organized supplies. Locals crowded the tables, curious and hopeful. Marcus entered quietly and whispered to Maya, "You've changed thousands of lives." She smiled at him. "We're just getting started." Later, Maya and Brielle walked through the unfinished wing, where future therapy rooms stretched beneath skylights. Brielle stopped at a window overlooking the street. "There are so many streets out there," she said softly. "I used to think none of them led home." Maya followed his gaze. "Home is more than walls. It's what people build together. Brielle nodded. Then I'll build it. That evening, Marcus hosted a modest dinner for the core team, including children, under twinkling lights in the main courtyard. Plates of roasted vegetables, herb-roasted chicken, rice pilaf, and a large bowl of sliced strawberries filled the table. Ethan politely thanked them before passing the bread basket. Eli showed a volunteer how to fold airplane-shaped napkins. Brielle carried a sketchpad, but she joined in the narrative at the end, making everyone laugh with a dramatic retelling of a failed science class. Marcus raised his glass of lemonade. To stay, to build, to put down roots deeper than fear. Maya raised her glass. And with wings wide enough to let others soar, they toasted, sealed by effort, empathy, and mutual trust. When most of the guests had left, Marcus took Maya's hand and led her outside, toward the garden beds. The fireflies were beginning to rise. He knelt, dipped his fingertip into the soil, and plucked a thin rose root. He planted it next to the sapling already there, 2 stems intertwined at the base. "This is our promise," he said softly. Maya knelt beside him to continue caring for him. He nodded. Every week, even when it was difficult, Maya smiled, tears shining in her eyes. Every week. Ethan and Eli would go out with a flashlight. They would follow them silently, stand beside them, shining their light on the new root. "Mom," Ethan whispered, "this is so cool." Marcus looked at them, then at Maya. "Thank you," he said, not loudly, but clearly. That night, back in the guest room, Maya paused in the doorway to the twins' bedroom. She watched Marcus tuck Eli into bed. She saw him gently smooth Ethan's hair before turning out the light. She stepped into the hallway and leaned against the wall. Marcus appeared beside her. "Are you staying?" She glanced at the dark door. "I always do." He nodded. She leaned her head against his shoulder. Light filtered through the tinted glass, the faint glow of a lamp in the nursery, the last whispers of twilight through the curtains. Outside, the rose's new root rested in the soil, and above it, the seedling waited, rooted, growing. Together. It all started with a letter. Typed, anonymous, postmarked from a small town in upstate New York. It arrived in a plain white envelope, addressed to Marcus Johnson in black ink. No return address, no signature, just 5 frightening words neatly printed in the center of the page. "She's not who you think." Marcus read it twice before carefully folding it and tucking it into his jacket pocket. He didn't say anything to Maya that night, or the next, but something in his demeanor shifted enough that Maya, with her keen sense of tension, felt the ripple beneath the calm. It wasn't the first time shadows had followed them, but this time it felt deliberate, more directed. The next morning, while Maya supervised the younger children in the art room, Marcus sat alone in his office, staring at his laptop screen. A name echoed in his mind. Terrence Morrow, a former partner, the kind of man who had always envied Marcus's success and, more dangerously, resented his turn to charity. He'd sent veiled threats before, mostly empty ones, but this was poisonous. Marcus opened a secure browser and began searching. Within minutes, he found a blog post on an unknown forum. It wasn't explicitly about Maya, but it came close. Words like made-up backstory and likability branding caught his attention. He left the site, but the damage was already done. He looked out the window. Maya was walking through the garden with Brielle, her hand resting lightly on the girl's shoulder. They laughed at something, without realizing it. He clenched his fist. That night, at dinner, he asked, "Have you ever had another name?" Maya blinked. What? Before Maya Williams, legally or otherwise. She put down her fork. "Why are you asking me this?" He hesitated. "I received a letter." He suggested that maybe you weren't completely communicative. Maya stood up slowly. "Do you believe?" Marcus looked up. His face showed conflict, not certainty. "I believe you, I really do. But I had to ask." Her voice was low but firm. "I was Maya Simmons until I turned 18. Then I took my grandmother's last name, Williams, because my mother is gone. And my father didn't earn the right to give me a name." Marcus nodded, feeling shame crawl up his spine. "I'm sorry. I'm not ashamed of who I was," Maya continued, "but I'm angry that someone thinks they can use my past as a weapon." Later. She found Brielle in the old art room. She handed him a copy of the letter. Brielle read it. Someone was scared. "Of what?" Maya asked. "Of what we built." The next day, a story aired, local, short, a commentator speculating about background checks and donor scrutiny. They flashed Maya's face on the screen. Words like "mysterious rise" and "guardian of troubled youth" flashed. Maya turned off the television. She didn't move. But she didn't sleep that night either. Marcus reached for her in bed. "I'll call the lawyers. We'll take care of it." She nodded. "We always knew this would happen. But it's not fair. Number, but it's familiar." 3 days later, Maya stood before the entire crew. The cameras were blocked. This was family. "I won't waste energy justifying my worth," she said, "but I will protect this space. If they come after me, let them. But they can't destroy what we've built." Angela stood up. "Let us handle the press." "You handle the mission." Joseph raised his hand. "Let's double the security." Brielle walked over and handed Maya a photo. A drawing, actually. It showed Maya holding a flashlight in a dark hallway. Small hands reached out to her from the shadows. "Keep walking," Brielle said. "We're right behind you." That night, Maya walked alone through the halls of the original center. She stopped at each door, remembering the children, the crises, the triumphs, your own fears. She reached the front steps just as Marcus parked the car. He got out and held up a folder. "Background check. Old records. Everything you've ever sent. It's clean. Ugh." She raised an eyebrow. "You doubted that." He shook his head. "I just needed to prove to the world what I already knew." She took a step toward him. "And what do you know, Marcus Johnson, that your past makes you powerful, not dangerous?" They stood together on the porch, silent. The wind rustled the banner hanging over the entrance. It read, "Hope lives here." Maya looked at him, then at Marcus. "Let's remind them why." Inside, the lights of the center shone in the night like a beacon, unwavering, unapologetic. And in that moment, Maya understood. Storms don't always come to destroy. Sometimes they clear the air for something even stronger. The first snow of winter fell gently on the Johnson estate, freezing the branches and silencing the world. The white blanket transformed familiar paths into new canvases. Maya watched from the upstairs window, a steaming mug in her hand, listening to the silence. She found comfort in the stillness of that night. The recent smear campaign silenced official investigations, finding no wrongdoing, donors reaffirmed their commitments, and local media coverage shifted from suspicion to admiration. Yet something unresolved gleamed beneath the festive lights already strung around the oak tree. The chill in the air brought back memories of the threats. Maya wondered if peace was deserved or merely guaranteed at this time of year. She went downstairs and found Marcus in the living room, unwrapping Christmas cards. Framed photographs hung on the fireplace. Migraine-induced laughter, exploding wall art, children in capes. Each reminded him why they had endured storms. He looked up. "I thought you could help seal the envelopes." Maya smiled and sat down next to him. He handed her a card from Ethan and Eli, stick figures of parents, 3 trees with the symbol of hope, 2 suns, and 2 smiley doodles. "We love you." Maya felt something explode inside her chest, less fragile this time, something resolute. She took a deep breath. Marcus reached across the coffee table and touched her hand. "How are you? Really?" Maya stared at the card. She felt the edges of doubt tremble, but the past had taught her that honoring scars made them sacred, not weak. "I've been thinking," she said softly, "about the letter, about the storms." Marcus nodded gently. Maya continued, "Maybe I don't want to erase the record. I want to mark it." He looked at her curiously. "Let's create a space downtown," she said. "A gallery dedicated not just to happy stories, but also to the shadows, the wounds, the survival, where people can present something they're proud to have overcome." Marcus arched an eyebrow. "Like a resilience hall?" Maya's eyes lit up. "Yes, not hidden, but honored." He nodded. "I can fund it. We can design it together." Over the next week, Maya worked with Brielle and community volunteers to gather pieces, drawings, written notes, and artwork brought in by teens who had been where Brielle had been. One painting depicted a masked figure with cracks of gold leaking from within. Another was a poem typed on crumpled paper. "I learned to stand again after thinking standing was a sin." On opening day, they cleared a wing of the Greenwich Center. Volunteers hung the displays among warm string lights. Soft instrumental music played. Naomi, one of the teens who had been in foster care, shared her essay, "My Left Arm is My Story." Families, staff, advocates, and local media attended. The room filled with silent reverence. Marcus stepped forward to speak. He said, "This space is our declaration that trauma will not silence people. It will bear witness. That wounds, when spoken of, become paths, not prisons." Someone asked the twins to speak. They looked at each other, uncertain. Eli stepped forward. "We designed these stones," he said, holding up a small container. Ethan added, "They were gold on the inside, but they were cracked, so we painted them gold again." Maya nodded, her voice hoarse. "That's what kintsugi does. It celebrates the cracks. It reminds us that brokenness isn't lesser. It's art." Applause echoed through the room. Then Maya found Brielle by the window. She looked small, but braver than ever. "I want to add something of my own," Brielle whispered. "A journal entry, from right after I arrived." Maya hugged her. "Thank you." Nearby, Lorraine and Marcus were holding hands. Maya stepped between them. Lorraine plucked a snowflake from Maya's hair. "How beautiful." Maya smiled. "Because it contains the truth," Marcus added. "And because you're not afraid of the truth?" That night, at the dinner table, the family laughed over board games and burnt gingerbread. Marcus chased Eli around the oak tree with a flashlight. Ethan read aloud from an old detective novel. Brigadier Joliffe at coffee with Miss Marple. Maya watched them. The boy who cried at midnight. The boy who refused to eat peas and felt the weight of the seasons passing. She weathered storms, questioned her belonging, faced accusations. But this was the place she had built with her own broken hands and heart. Not perfect, but real. After the boys fell asleep, Marcus found Maya once again by the fire. He slid an envelope across the coffee table. Inside was a small piece of paper, an invitation, speaker at the statewide youth trauma conference, Brielle Harris. Maya's eyes flicked to the empty chair next to her. She knew who that implied. Marcus offered gently, "Would you share the stage with her?" She paused. She thought of storms and light, coming and staying. She turned to him and nodded. "Of course." He smiled, relief rushing through his chest like warmth. They leaned against each other. Outside the window, the snow fell steadily and persistently. Inside, the fire crackled, and Maya could feel it in her bones. Healing wasn't about forgetting the storms. It was about starting over in gold. Spring blossomed in Connecticut like a promise about to bloom. At the statewide youth trauma conference in Hartford, a large hall buzzed with anticipation. Government officials, social workers, counselors, teachers, and young people from across the state gathered to hear stories not only of trauma, but also of transformation. Maya and Brielle sat side by side on a low wooden stage, facing folding chairs and bright lights. Behind them, a giant screen displayed a golden bird breaking free from the shadowy bars of the mural Brielle had painted months earlier. As they sat down, the audience leaned forward. Marcus and Ethan sat in the front row, Ethan holding his new sketchbook, and Paige opened it to a drawing of 4 figures holding hands under a sunrise. The moderator introduced them: Maya Williams, co-founder of the Johnson Williams Center, and Brielle Harris, a former foster carer. Their story is one of resilience, loyalty, and the power of being seen. They began by recounting the first few days: Brielle's arrival at the center, her distrust, her refusal to go to therapy. Mia, sitting nearby, watched with teary eyes. A few other teens nodded in acknowledgement. Then Brielle took over. Her voice shook at first. "I used to think my voice was the thunder before the storm, dangerous, always too loud or angry. And then one day, they didn't run. They didn't call me volatile. They just listened." Maya added, "Healing doesn't happen on stage or in press releases. It happens in those moments of silence when someone remains, despite the storm." They talked for 20 minutes. Questions followed. How do we train people who have experienced trauma? How do we balance structure with empathy? What accountability keeps our mission honest? Maya responded. Sometimes we value emotional credibility more than credentials. Not because diplomas don't matter, but because the truth sometimes begins with the scars people choose not to hide. She concluded, "Our model isn't a program. It's a responsibility, showing up even when they don't expect it, to stay, even when it's inconvenient, and to help young people rewrite their stories, not erase them." The room fell silent. Then the applause began, soft but steady, until hands clapped through the ceiling beams. Backstage, Marcus hugged Brielle and turned to Maya. "You led, I just followed." She shook her head. "You built the space. That's why we can lead." Later, at a reception, Brielle chatted with the students, answering questions about art and healing. Maya watched from across the room with pride and calm. She remembered the first time they met, insecure, reserved, and irritable, and how much she had grown because of it. Marcus approached with a glass of iced tea. "You taught someone to fly tonight." Maya gave a wry smile. She taught herself. "I just gave her space." He smiled and squeezed her hand. As the crowd thinned, a woman from the audience approached them, Dr. Iris Patel, a professor at the Yale School of Social Work. "Her story is extraordinary. We'd like to partner with you to bring your resilience hall to our campus to train our students." Joseph and Angela joined her. They exchanged enthusiastic nods. It wasn't an expansion on paper, it was an amplification of its values. Its small center now resonated beyond its physical walls. On the way back in Marcus's car, twilight colored the rows of cars on the highway. Ethan dozed in the back seat. He'd fallen asleep as soon as they'd left the hallway. Eli lay beside him, his sketchbook open on the seat between them, the unfinished drawings still glowing. Marcus looked at Maya. "Change the world?" She leaned her head back against the seat. "If enough small voices join together, yes." Marcus placed his hand gently over hers. When they arrived home, Europa greeted them at the door. The house glowed softly in the early evening lights. The snow had melted around the trails, replaced by fresh crocuses peeking through the damp soil. Upstairs, the twins slept in their room, snuggled under the quilts Brielle had helped make. Maya paused in the doorway. The doorway held their nightly routine in soft whispers and cherished dreams. She entered silently, placing her hand gently on Ethan's head. At the same time, Marcus adjusted Eli's blanket and kissed his forehead. The two pulled away and met across the hall. "We did this," Marcus whispered. "We keep doing this," Maya replied. Outside, morning birds perched on the branches at the edge of the garden. Inside, healing continued, a never-ending conversation. A momentum fueled by collective courage. They closed the door softly, and for the first time in years, Maya Williams slept, not because she knew she would, but because she finally felt like she belonged here. Summer had come full circle, and with it, the Johnson Williams estate glowed in the golden afternoon sun. The gardens were buzzing with bees. The oak leaves rustled overhead, forming gentle arches. Today marked the second anniversary of Maya's first day, but it felt more like home than a memory. Inside the solarium, the children placed framed pictures on a long wooden bench. Drawings, poems, clay figures, each marked with a name and the date it had been healed. Beneath them lay the golden stones Ethan and Eli had painted long ago. A new addition occupied the center of the display. Brielle's painting of a bird breaking ropes and flying, titled Our Story in Song. Maya guided a group of teenagers through the exhibition. When they reached their pieces, each shared a brief reflection. A girl recited a poem about being lost in the darkness until someone simply sat down next to her. A boy shared a drawing of broken wings and the words, "But I learned to float." Marcus watched from the window, his hands crossed over his chest. Lorraine stood beside him, also watching, both of them absorbing what had become more than a center, a mosaic of survival. Maya crept out and found them under the oak tree. The twins chased paper airplanes overhead. Marcus offered her a seat on the bench. "Look at this," he said, gesturing toward the art exhibit. She followed his gaze and felt a knot of gratitude tighten in her chest. "That's what we built," she said softly. "A sanctuary of truth," Lorraine added. Maya took Lorraine's hand and squeezed it lightly. Under the sign reading, "Healing Lives Through Action." A small crowd gathered. Angela approached, clipboard in hand. "We confirmed that the new location will open in Hartford this fall, and Yale has approved the Hall of Resilience curriculum for student training." Maya blinked. "Really?" Angela beamed. "We're already scheduling, and schools across the state want to replicate your model." Marcus stepped forward. "Which means we need more mentors. Would you be interested in leading this, Maya?" She exhaled and let her gaze fall on the twins who were approaching her. "I'd love to," she said. "But only if we keep our values intact. No shortcuts, no concessions." He nodded. "Exactly." Ethan and Eli stopped and ran back. Ethan climbed onto Maya's lap and clung tightly. Eli pressed his head against her side. Lorraine watched them and smiled through her tears. "You changed everything." Maya covered Ethan's little head with her hand. "They transformed me." Marcus watched silently. The late afternoon light softened. A car pulled up to the entrance. Teresa, a former foster youth and now an intern at the center, jumped out and ran over. She was carrying 2 bicycles tied together with ribbons. "Gifts," she declared, "for you and Ethan from the teenagers." Ethan jumped from Maya's lap, his eyes wide. Marcus and Teresa wrestled with their bikes while Eli celebrated. When they were ready, Ethan took the smaller pink bike and Maya the yellow one. She placed him on the seat, adjusted his helmet carefully and tenderly, and then mounted the bike. They pedaled slowly along the trails of the property. Marcus held Eli's hand. The leaves above filtered the late-day sun until the light danced through them like confetti. Lorraine followed close behind, with Brielle and Teresa. It seemed grand, ordinary, sacred. At the edge of the garden, they stopped to admire the rose root and the seedling, nestled side by side. They were stronger, thick bark, new branches, buds ready to bloom again. The twins climbed down and ran ahead to chase butterflies. Marcus and Maya exchanged a look. "Do you think the storms are over?" he asked. She let the moment pass. "I don't know, but we've built something the storms can't take away." He kissed her softly. "So whatever happens, we're ready." They helped with dinner later, grilled fish, garden vegetables, and still warm fresh bread. The table was full, staff, children, families, and volunteers. The conversation turned to new plans, summer promotions, student workshops, and outreach programs for the holidays. Lorraine raised her glass. To stay, to put down roots and grow wings. They toasted. When the party died down at dusk, the twins dragged Marcus and Maya upstairs to show them their new fort blankets draped over the chairs, fairy lights strung inside, books stacked on the floor. "Sometimes they sleep out here," Ethan explained. Maya sat and watched the two boys, who had been empty of loss, now filled with laughter. Marcus whispered, "Thank you." She leaned toward him. "Thank yourself." Outside the window, fireflies were beginning to flutter in patterns that seemed both accidental and beautiful. Inside, the fort glowed with the warm light of a lamp. Maya closed her eyes, breathing in the sound of peace. This was the end of a chapter, the beginning of everything, because healing isn't definitive. It's persistent, imperfect, and brilliant. And the light, it remains, always. If you want to hear even more powerful stories, subscribe now. Comment your opinion on the story and share it with 5 people you love. Thank you very much. See you tomorrow.